Hi, and welcome to Coaching Voices podcast. I'm Pravin Sharma, an executive and leadership coach and consultant with over 2 decades of experience in the industry. I truly believe in the transformative power of coaching and the profound impact it can have on people's lives. In each episode, we dive into candid conversations with seasoned coaches, exploring what coaching really is and whether it's the right path for you. Together, we uncover how you can unlock your full potential and step confidently into leadership roles within your organization. Welcome to another episode of our Coaching Voices podcast. I'm excited to introduce a remarkable guest, Donnell. Joy is a trauma therapist and coach with over a decade of experience, specializing in helping professional women reclaim their lives from the grips of burnout and stress. What makes Joy's journey so powerful is her personal story. Having battled high-functioning anxiety, perfectionism, and constant pressure of people-pleasing, she understands firsthand the challenges many high-achieving women face. Today, she'll be sharing insight on how to balance personal and professional lives, and most importantly, how to find joy and fulfillment in the process. Let's welcome Joy Donnell to our show. Hi, Joy. How are you this morning?
I'm great. How are you, Pravin?
I'm doing excellent. Thanks for asking. Let's take a dive into your personal journey. Can you share more about your journey from battling the burnout to becoming a trauma therapist and a coach?
Yeah, of course. So the first time I experienced the symptoms of burnout, I was in a very work toxic environment. And I was running a big department and brought in to problem solve. But what I realized was there was a difference between the men and women in how they were treated. In so much that the women were expected to make the tea regardless of the seniority of their position. And also their opinions weren't respected, including mine. And I found that very, very difficult. And eventually someone made a comment to me, maybe you should just leave. I thought, maybe I should. My health is suffering, so I need to leave. So I left that position and then went on to actually have a year off and decide what I wanted to do. And that's when I started originally coaching, which was in 2004, I think it was. And shortly after that, I was offered the opportunity to set up a business with a business partner. And we started the business. It was extremely successful from day one. Mm-hmm. And we grew extremely quickly. So within 4 years, we had 60 employees. We were turning over 7 or 8 million.
Wow.
And all of the growing pains that go with that.
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized is my mum felt very ill, terminally ill. Mm-hmm. And all of the women in my family have died before the age of 65. And I'd spent 4 years in this job, of a company of which I half owned, 50% of it was mine. And I was constantly sick. I was sick with viruses. I was sick with headaches. Every pocket, handbag, drawer had something like aspirin, paracetamol, ibuprofen tucked away. So I could always get at any of them. I was almost like a drug addict for the headache tablets. And I realized I wasn't sleeping. And then there was a few crunch moments. Obviously, one of them was my mum passing away. And then my husband said, I think you need to take all the bottles to the bottle bank. I said, well, why can't you do it? He said, well, they're all yours. And I remember walking outside and seeing, must have been about 40 empty wine bottles in the bottle bank, waiting to go for recycling. Yeah. I thought, oh my goodness, I took that a month ago. That's a month's worth of wine, and my husband doesn't drink. Mm-hmm. So there was a few realizations and marks that kept coming up. And then I also have an autoimmune disease. So I'm tracked quite often by consultants. And the consultant had warned me that, if things didn't change, I was going to have to start taking quite a big range of medications, which I didn't want to do. So I made a decision whilst on holiday that I was going to walk away from the job. And if it meant walking away from the money, then that was going to happen too. So I planned out for a 4-year exit. I did it in 3.5 years. And with that, my health immediately turned around within 3 months. So the consultant that I saw said to me, "What are you doing differently?" So from the point I'd had my blood tests done and then had them repeated 4 months later, he didn't think it was the same person. So my physiology had changed so dramatically in 4 months, 3 to 4 months, just by giving up my job.
Well, is there any other attributes that you can think of that contributed to your better health other than just quitting that particular toxic environment?
No, I was living in the same house. I had the same friendships. I was exercising the same amount. When I say it was a toxic environment, it was more, I always think that burnout doesn't exist in a vacuum. You don't turn up to work and burnout happens. You have to be a willing participant, and I was a willing participant. So when I say that, I had certain behaviors that would contribute to my burnout, and that was things like people pleasing. I'm a very high-level perfectionist. I had very controlling behaviors, and all of those were as a result of me feeling like I had to meet the needs of others.
These are the signs of the burnout, right?
Yeah. Okay. So, some of those can be as a result of childhood trauma. I can't say I had childhood trauma, but I did, when I look back as a therapist on my own history, my parenting was good, but my dad was emotionally absent. So he would congratulate me through my mum. He would never congratulate me directly. So when I look at that, that's how that type of upbringing contributed to my people-pleasing behaviors, which I never thought I had. And then when I look back, I can actually see them very clearly now. If a customer called at 4:00 in the morning because they needed something, I would be up, I would answer. I would almost make out like I wasn't asleep. I mean, when I think about how stupid that sounds, but I didn't want them to know I wasn't available. Whereas my business partner would turn his phone off. So he had very strong boundaries.
Yeah.
I had absolutely zero boundaries. And then I was constantly exhausted, constantly tired. I was, tired and wired, as they say. Couldn't sleep, but was absolutely shattered. Would drink a bottle of wine at night and then go out for a run in the morning. Eat the wrong foods and then always be on a diet. It was very extremes of behavior. So when I say it doesn't exist in a vacuum, you have to play your part in that burnout scenario. And I played it very well.
So that particular burnout we're talking about has contributed, that has affected your personal and professional life, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
What strategies do you recommend? And I'm sorry, I mean, we're talking about the women. I think in this case, it applies for men as well.
It's men too.
Yeah. What are the strategies do you think, or you can possibly recommend for them to balance their, these two side of things, like personal and professional lives?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to take stock of where you are in your life. And if you get up on a Monday morning or even a Sunday evening, and I write about this quite often, that feeling of dread and fear that comes with, not wanting to go to work on a Monday morning, being exhausted before you get there. I used to plan how to get out of work before I'd even got there. So if you have those type of things happening, if you feel oppressed, if you feel a sense of anxiety, then you're probably heading down that track. And some of that will be your contribution to that equation, and some will be the environment or the people or both that you're working in. In my case, it was all three. So you have to take stock and decide what you are capable and committed to changing, because without that, nothing else is going to happen. So nobody's going to drag you out of there because they see you as a victim. Maybe your partner might. But if you are behaving as a victim of your circumstance rather than taking control and making different choices, then you will remain where you are until it's too late. So that's the first thing, is to take stock. Start to notice who also contributes to this witch's cauldron of burnout or these symptoms. There will be people in your life that will take advantage of you. They will take advantage of your good nature. They will take advantage of the fact that you don't have boundaries. They will take advantage of the fact that they can always lean on you because you'll take that extra work on. So there will be people both inside your friendship groups, inside your work colleague groups. Just look at who they are and start to notice if occasionally you withdraw that option to support them when they need it most, what happens? Now, you will feel uncomfortable. You will feel it's a stretch, but occasionally start to do that. Just see what happens. And the people who you consider close friends and care about you will say, are you okay? Normally you're okay to support me or to help. What's wrong? The people who don't really care about you will just become angry, become irritated. That might fire off something else in you. But the reality is they don't care about you. They just want something from you. And that's not a healthy, balanced relationship, either in a personal relationship or work.
No.
If you are in that constant state of feeling like you're fearful, so, if you've got high levels of anxiety, then you might benefit from some therapeutic intervention, somebody to talk to. So if you're in a big company, they very often offer workplace support through HR, so you can go and talk to somebody either on the telephone or face-to-face. But if it's a much smaller company, then you might need to go and see your doctor or book for some private therapeutic intervention or even some coaching.
Yeah, I was doing some level of research, and there are some statistics about the burnout that they experienced just here in California. About the report indicates about 57% of employees are experiencing at least moderate levels of burnout. And there's also a LinkedIn article that talks about 62% of employees are experiencing burnout, which is a significant increase from before the COVID-19 pandemic. So this burnout is going on, and you've been a victim of this burnout. So there's this a reality that exists. Tons of people who are into this situation, they cannot leave their job because there is a financial aspect of it. Now, what's your recommendation for those who are facing this burnout but can't leave that work? They still have to sit on that work, but feel that burnout. How could they balance themselves in these situations?
So in those situations, what I'd recommend is starting with yourself. You can only improve yourself. You can't improve other people. So when I say start with yourself, start with the things that you notice that are good about yourself, about situations, about your environment. It doesn't have to be about other people. So these are things that we call glimmers rather than triggers. So I'll give you an interesting example. I was in the armed forces for 10 years, and one of my bosses was a very high-ranking general who was a true gentleman and extremely good at his job, but a very lovely person as well. And one day he said to me, "You don't like that person over there, do you?" And I said, "What on earth makes you think that?" He said, "I can see it all over your face." He said, "You really don't like them." I said, "Well, they are rude and very arrogant. And I'm lucky I have a very good boss in you." And he said, there will always come a time when there will be someone that you don't like, but you have to respect. He said, so if you can't find something you like about them, find something you respect about them. Now, if there is somebody who is deliberately taking advantage of you, then that's very, very difficult. That might be that you need to go and speak to your HR people or even your line manager if you're in that situation. But sometimes people who come across as quite arrogant and controlling are actually in a position of authority and they have to get things done. So maybe a little bit of compassion from me to them, how I view them, may be an opportunity to see them in a different way. What would I do if I was in their shoes and I had all that pressure? So sometimes just by changing and reframing your view of something or someone, you can expand the information that you take in and view it in a different way. So that's one thing you can do. As I said, looking for glimmers on a daily basis. So rather than looking for all the things that are going to ignite you to feel like you're on fire, look for the things that make you feel calm. So maybe looking out the window at work on a regular basis, going for a walk around the office, getting some water, noticing the temperature. So become very, very sensitized to smaller things that you can notice that are positive. And noticing those positive things on a daily basis has been scientifically proven to improve a whole heap of things physiologically and psychologically. And it's one of the things that I talk about a lot is once you start to look for those things and tell your brain to look for them, it goes on a whole march looking for all of these positive things. It's basically, there's a part of your brain called the reticular activating system that goes on a hunt looking for things that you tell it to look for. So if you say don't look for a red car, it goes looking for a red car because you've said don't, but you've said look for a red car.
It's the control of your mind. Yeah, I heard about that. Yes, yes, absolutely. And it definitely works. Yeah. There are so many theories that prove, the desire or the aspiration, or you have some kind of burning desire, I would say, that you want to get it, you'll get it no matter what. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let me go back to our initial conversation. You said that you were in that environment, you left, and after you waited for a year or so, and then you started your business. Can you talk, because that business, the revenue wise, it appears to me that the business did, significantly well.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about that business, please?
The business that I exited.
Well, I mean, you exited the toxic environment and you went into the business, right? So that's the one.
Yes. Okay. Yes, of course. Okay. So the business that we set up was strategic waste management or recycling resource management. So we started off in a single room office with 4 people, and we didn't even have a telephone. We had to get a hole drilled through the wall from the people next door to borrow one of their telephone lines. Okay. And that's how, bootstrapped we were as a business, but how quickly we were able to grow. Mm-hmm. And I think the essence of us being able to grow so quickly and so responsively to our customers' needs was because we always said, yeah, we can do that. We were highly flexible. We built the business to be flexible and responsive. And very rarely did we walk away from any business that wasn't profitable. So we had massive opportunities to work with customers all over the world, but we were quite selective in who we worked with and for. Mm-hmm. And the reason behind that was if we can't add massive amount of value, then there's absolutely no reason for us to be here, because you can do all that yourself. You're paying us for nothing really. So one of the things that we used to work on was a basis called profit share. Mm-hmm. So if we managed to either reduce the cost by a significant percentage of a procedure, mm-hmm. or we managed to enhance the profits of a certain procedure, for the first year, we would take 50% of the profit over and above what the existing was, or the difference in the cost. So that's how we made our growth so quickly.
That is really an excellent way to be in the business and getting ahead. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it also made us very focused on results and achievements on behalf of the customers, because the reality was if we would get paid, but we wouldn't get paid significant sums. Yeah. But if we did manage to achieve the targets that we had forecast we set, we would get a significant percentage of that.
That's also some level of motivation. That's
high, very high motivation.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about coaching. I know you've been a health coach. How did you get started to become a health coach? What are the values that you can think of becoming a health coach? And it's a loaded question. I'm sorry.
That's all
And
right.
how would you, think about people who wanted to go into that profession? What are the advice that you can throw at them, whether or not that particular, I mean, for you, of course, that particular profession is an excellent career path.
Yeah.
For those who are struggling, whether or not I should take that leap, what are the suggestions that you have?
Okay, so I came into health coaching on the back of transformational coaching. I've always had a very strong interest in health, from my own reasons. And as I said, all the women in my family on my maternal side passed away before 65. So, I'm trying to buck that trend. So that was a strong motivation. And I'm quite well read around the health profiling side of things. And I think a lot of people are in this day and age, information is there, but actually making the changes that you need in your life are very difficult. And that's where a health coach comes in. So health coaching for me was looking at the behavioral change that comes through coaching as a standard. And the difference with health coaching is there's potentially times where you may end up working with what we call clients, but they're referred as a patient from a doctor who's been told to lose weight, change their eating habits, exercise more, de-stress, build healthy boundaries for better relationships, because we work on the 5 pillars. But the reality is that they either don't recognize they need change or they don't know where to start. So they know what the outcome should be, as in they should eat a healthier diet, more protein, lower fat, all of those things. But they don't know where to start. And sometimes just saying, well, just go shopping and buy lean chicken and salad isn't very helpful. So it's about working through all of the change requirements, the cycle of change, where they are on it, acknowledging that, providing suitable level of education for them, things that fit with their understanding and don't over-educate, and helping them to make very small changes that fit with their lifestyle but don't overwhelm them. And also, one thing that's very, very important in health coaching when you're making those changes is bringing their whole family into that environment to understand what the impact might be on all of them. Because if you're asking a mother who cooks meals for her husband and children every day to stop eating certain foods, but the rest of the family eat them, then that's very, very difficult. From a therapeutic point of view, things like relationships, when you start to change how you present yourself, and we'll use people pleasing as an example, when you start to say no, your relationships start to change and you start to realize they were never friends or they never cared about me anyway. But a lot of people around you will do their hardest, try their hardest to keep you as you are, because that's more comfortable for them. So again, it's about understanding relational dynamics. It's about understanding the physiology of the body. It's about understanding the psychology of change. So I think health coaching is one of the most exciting fields to be in terms of being a coach. And I think certainly the way the health of the world is going, health coaches are going to be probably one of the most prolific roles, sat next to doctors, obviously not at the same level, but in terms of behavior change. We can't promote a prescription, but we can promote change. And that's what I think is so exciting about it. For someone coming into the field who is new, what I would say is, no one seems to know what coaching is, whether it's transformational coaching, burnout coaching, health coaching. No one knows what it is. So if you tell people you're a coach, they look at you and go, oh, that's nice. Okay, not quite sure what that is. So you really need to understand what you do and what the benefit is to that person, because the benefits are what will sell you into that person's life, because they're buying you, they're not buying coaching. And I keep hearing that. And it wasn't until I expressed that myself with potential clients that I truly understood it. So I think the biggest piece of advice I would give is be a human to a human, be authentic. If your own health is not brilliant, then try and get that in order first. Because if people are asking you questions and you're sitting there eating Mars bars and ice creams and they're having to eat low-fat chicken, it's really not going to resonate. And when you don't believe what you're talking about, people don't believe you either. So I would say be authentic. Have a sense of freedom in terms of walk side by side with a client. Never lead them, never take them by the nose. You're literally holding their hand and helping them take one step at a time into their future. And that takes patience and no ego. And that's probably what I would say to anyone that wants to go into coaching first or health coaching as a career.
That's an excellent advice. Thanks for sharing that insight. People go into this coaching, they start to build their niche and they focus on that particular niche. But there's a big struggle within it as well. The struggle is in terms of finding the right client who they can serve. And a lot of people in that particular area quit is because they could not sustain their life as there is no clients for them.
Yeah.
What are the scenarios or the possible advice that you can give to them who are kind of like struggling to find the new clients?
I would take it back a step. So I started looking for health coaching clients well before I'd finished my health coach training and before I was accredited. So I can recall having a conversation with a tree surgeon in my garden. And maybe it's a therapist in me, I don't know. But there are a lot of people who give me their life stories. And within 5 minutes, he'd stopped cutting down the tree and was telling me all about his family and his life and the fact he was diabetic. And I said, oh, that's really interesting. I'm studying that at the moment. Is it okay if I ask you a few questions? And he said, yes, absolutely. And as a result of that, he became my first client. Now, that was just on the back of a conversation. I'd never met him before. He didn't know me from, anyone. He'd met my husband a couple of times, but there was no conversation about me, what I did. And I asked him, would you be open to exploring what's called a coaching relationship? But it's actually something about helping you to make the changes to enable you to have a healthier life without being deprived. And his eyes lit up and he said, I'd love to. So as I said, he was my first client. And I think very often as coaches, we think we're speaking to other coaches so they understand the language of change. And the reality is they don't. So you never know who is sat next to you on a bus, on a train, on an aeroplane, in a coffee shop. I've politely interrupted other people's conversation and said, I'm really sorry to be rude, but I overheard your conversation and there's a piece of information that I think might be really valuable to you. And I've just given it to them with my business card. So, I've shown them a screenshot on my phone. It might be really interesting to you. I've picked up a client that way. You've got to have the balls to go and do it. You've got to be able to put yourself out there. But what's the worst that's going to happen? People say, well, that's a bit rude, interrupting me. But the reality is you don't know who you're talking to. And if you're offering it with kindness and openness, then what's the problem?
Right. And at the same time, you're building some level of relationship there. I mean, that
it's trust. Yeah.
It's trust. It might not happen immediately, but down the road, who knows tomorrow, that particular individual will go and, they're having they're sitting together and they're talking to some other people about you. So I think that's the best way to build a client base for sure. Now, if we wanted to take a leap into the future, right? Coming back to the burnout topic here, what changes would you like to see in the world, in the professional world, to support people better in avoiding this burnout that we talked about?
I think there's an education piece. And I was talking to a colleague a couple of weeks ago, and I think, we've brought neurodiversity to the front. We brought menopause to the front. This is now the time for, I'll use the word trauma, but I don't mean it as in the abrupt traumatic events that happen in people's lives, like abuse or car crashes. But when you bring your behavior into the workplace that is as a result of traumatic events that may or may not have happened in your life, some of it might be perception, then the reality is you're going to head for burnout a lot quicker. So with that in mind, one of the things that I'm doing starting January is corporate workshops around how trauma presents in the workplace through behavior, with training line managers to be able to manage those behaviors in an appropriate manner, and then also refer those people on for treatment if that's appropriate. Because there will be behaviors such as people freeze when they're overwhelmed, and they just don't talk to anybody. They don't tell anybody they haven't done their work, and they literally just go underground. You can't get anything out of them. And those type of behaviors, if you're intervening in them early enough, they're not going to go to burnout. They're not going to be, failing at their job and not developing in their career. And the opportunity is to have a really great, healthy workforce that is worth billions to the economy, just by putting some training information in place. And then through practice and recognition, people start to realize, oh, actually, I think I need to have a little chat with Joy over in the corner because she's not looking herself this week. I don't know what's going on. And it might be, the one straw that broke the camel's back. It might be that you notice somebody's always seeking your validation, always bringing work into you for a tick in the box. Those type of people are going to burn you out, because you can't get your job done as a line manager or as a leader. So it's such a negative spiral. Once it starts, it becomes very toxic in its own box. So the important thing is about educating people to recognize it, understand it. It's a part of who we are. It's a part of the human condition. But actually, what can we do about it, and how would we like it to be in future? We'd like to have healthy people at work. We'd like to have healthy relationships at work. We'd like to have healthy environments at work, and we can only do that by education and change. So that's where I would like it to be, sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. Thanks for that insight. Really appreciate it. We're coming towards the end of the show. Do you have some kind of insightful thought that you could throw at the listeners so that they can take an advantage from your advice?
I'll give you a piece of advice somebody gave to me. Nobody ever knows what you know, and you always underestimate what you know. Everybody does. So when you see something not quite right or not going well, and you have a tool or a technique to be able to help that person, before you dive in, offer it and just say, I might be able to help. Would you like me to? Because that can build a relationship in itself. All coaching is about relationships. So start building relationships with people by offering your services in the smallest way, because you have unique talents, you have unique skills, and the other person might not know about them because you don't talk about them very often. So yeah, offer them out.
Unless you talk, they don't know who you are, right? So that's an excellent way to put it together.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Great to meet you, Finn.
That was Joy Donnell, an executive and health coach, in conversation with Pravin Sharma at Insight Ignite Coaching Voices podcast. You can contact Joy at joy@joydonnell coaching.com. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Coaching Voices podcast. I hope today's conversation gave you valuable insights into the world of coaching and leadership. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It helps others find the show and supports us in continuing to bring you inspiring content. Do not forget to share this episode with anyone you think might benefit from the discussion. And if you're looking to explore coaching further or have any questions, please feel free to connect with us. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep growing, keep leading, and stay curious.